Hi my loves, and welcome to another video. Today I wanted to talk about some ways that living in Korea has changed me. So if you're curious to know in what ways I've changed for better or worse since living in Korea, then just stay tuned. I'm gonna start with something that I'm not so proud of, which is that living in Korea has actually made me a little bit more impatient. Korea is such a fast-paced country that I find myself getting genuinely irritated when I go back home to the UK, which is a much more slow-paced country compared to Korea. While living in Korea, I just got very used to everything being really fast-paced. That includes service in restaurants and cafes. So now when I go home to the UK to visit my family, I find myself getting genuinely kind of irritated when it starts to take a while for my food to come out in restaurants. I kind of sit there like, wait, did it always take this long to get food? Or but also even in Korea, if I notice in cafes that drinks are taking longer than usual to make, even then I'm kind of like, why is it taking so long? Whereas before I used to wait for like drinks and food with no issue at all. Like I never even used to think about how long it was taking. I've always prided myself on being a very patient person. I was always the type of person who was like, it just takes as long as it takes, you know? But when you live in such a fast-paced society and you're so used to just getting things immediately, that definitely makes you become more impatient when you have to wait for things. So yeah, I'm not proud to admit it, but unfortunately I have become a little bit more impatient since living in Korea. The second way I noticed that living in Korea has changed me is that now I am much more tolerant of other foods and also much more willing to try other foods. When I was living in the UK, I pretty much ate the same foods every single day. I had a variety of dishes that I would eat. It almost always consisted of having bread. Sometimes I would eat bread 2 or even 3 times a day, honestly. And I still stand by buttered toast being one of the best foods you can eat. I'm gonna die on that hill. I adore toast to this day. But I would rarely try new foods. If I saw a new food, I was less likely to be like, I want to see what that's like. A good example of this is that as a child, I hated mushrooms. Mushrooms were like the devil's food to me. Like I couldn't stand mushrooms. It was the texture. The texture of them was like, they had the texture of how I imagined a slug would taste if you ate a slug. And even as an adult, I refused to try mushrooms because I hated them so much as a child. And we all know that as you get older, your taste buds change, and things that you used to dislike as a child, you can grow to love as an adult. But even then, I just would not try mushrooms because I hated them so much as a kid. Well, fast forward to being in Korea, my father-in-law wanted to go to a mushroom stew restaurant. I didn't know these things even existed in Korea, but it was just essentially a restaurant that served 13 different types of mushrooms in a stew in the middle of the table. So it's a very Korean style restaurant where the soup, the bowl of soup, was just in the middle of the table for everyone to share. And then they brought over these 13 different kinds of mushrooms, and then you would just put these in the soup and wait for them to boil a little bit and then eat them. Even going into this restaurant, I was like, I'm going to hate this. I'm gonna have a really bad time.
You're gonna have a bad time.
Surprisingly, I actually really did enjoy it. I thought it was really good. Some of the mushrooms had textures where it didn't even really seem like mushrooms. It had more of like a noodle texture. I think it did help that they had like different dips too, so like you could take the mushrooms out and like dip it in the sauce and then eat it. I think that helped. But even so, I actually really enjoyed it. And that's something I thought I would never say. I thought I would never eat a mushroom until the day I died. And it turns out I ate 13 different kinds in one day. I have actually tried many different foods since living in Korea, admittedly with varying results. I did try blood sausage here in Korea. I only tried it twice and it wasn't the worst food I've ever tried in my life, but mentally I couldn't get past the fact that it was blood. There was blood in it, and that's a huge thing for me. It always has been my whole life, that if I think really hard about what I'm eating in certain situations, if it's blood or something like that, then it freaks me out and I can't eat it. In the UK we have something called jellied eels, and they are absolutely disgusting looking. I've never tried it, admittedly, but I will put an image on the screen for you to show you. They look hideous. So eel was one of the foods that I never in a million years thought I would try. Again, enter Korea. My father-in-law, again, he wanted to go and eat grilled eel. Now, grilled eel is served in a way that is similar to how Korean barbecue restaurants are set up. So they have a grill in the middle of the table, then they bring over the eel and then they grill it, or you grill it yourself. And then alongside the grilled eel, you have sam, so lettuce wraps and garlic and dips and all of that good stuff, and then you can just make your own lettuce wraps with the eel and with all of the different vegetables and sauces. Again though, I think what really helped with the eel was that the sauce that it came with like a ginger, garlic, soy sauce kind of mixture, and that sauce, the like ginger garlic sauce that it comes with, is so good. I'm telling you, it's one of the best sauces I've ever eaten in my life, and so I think that really helped with me enjoying it. But grilled eel is actually now one of my favorite foods to eat in Korea. Shocking to me, shocking to everyone who knows me, but yeah, I actually really enjoy eel now. I also ended up trying raw squid, although this one was an accident. I can't get on board with a lot of raw foods. I can eat raw tuna and raw salmon, but when it comes to raw seafood, I'm a little bit dodgy still. You might have heard of it, but there's something called hui, and a dish that they can serve in these hui restaurants is live octopus, where they basically chop up live octopus and then serve it to you, and it's like still moving on the plate. Again, pretty hard for me to come to terms with still. I am yet to try live octopus. Maybe one day I will be brave enough to try it, but not yet. However, the thing that I did try, as I mentioned, is raw squid. And again, admittedly, I tried this raw squid by mistake. It came out as pantan and I ate it without knowing what it was. I thought it was a vegetable because it was marinated in this really bright red sauce, so you couldn't really tell what it was, and to me I thought it was a vegetable, so I just ate it. My husband was looking at me like, and then I looked at him like, he was like, that was raw squid. If I can just get out of my own head about eating raw foods, then I think it's something that I could maybe eat in the future. Korea just has that way of making you more open to trying new foods, especially as Korean people in general, I think, are very excited for you to try new foods. I have definitely tried foods that I never in a million years thought I would try, and I've even ended up enjoying a lot of what I've tried, so yeah. The next thing that I wanted to talk about are beauty standards. Whether you like it or not, when you live in a new country, the beauty standards of that country definitely do start to affect you, and Korea especially is a very difficult place to live if you suffer with your self-confidence. This country is very focused on outward beauty and they place a lot of importance on being beautiful. Now, I will say that the very strict beauty standards in Korea have improved slightly in recent years, especially when it comes to the body image in Korea. Years ago, it used to be you could only be extremely skinny to be considered beautiful. which obviously is very problematic. But nowadays in Korea, being healthy I think is much more important, and you do see a lot more variety in body shapes in Korea these days. However, outward beauty is still valued very highly in Korean society. I think that's partly the reason why Korean skincare and Korean beauty products blew up in Korea, but also globally. Korean skincare and Korean beauty products are popular amongst both women and men in Korea. Whenever I'm walking around Korea, I consistently see women with the most beautifully applied makeup. Honestly, same for men. I see men who are definitely wearing makeup, but in a way that it looks really natural. As someone who is a complete novice when it comes to makeup, it does make me insanely envious, I'm not gonna lie, when I see all of these gorgeous men and women walking around with the most perfect makeup. I think when I first moved to Korea, living here definitely made me focus more on my appearance in a negative way. I would say for the most part, I would often criticize myself and I would spend a lot of time looking in mirrors. There are mirrors everywhere in Korea, even in subway stations. You are confronted with your appearance a lot in Korea, and I would spend a lot of time looking in mirrors, picking out flaws and things that I felt I needed to improve. Plastic surgery is very common in Korea, and again, there are advertisements for plastic surgery clinics everywhere, and so it's very accessible and it's very easy for you to pick out these flaws that you see and then be like, I should get surgery to fix X problem that you have. But now that I've been living in Korea for a while and I am older than when I first arrived, I'm much more comfortable in my own skin now, which I think is mostly thanks to the fact that I am older and just more comfortable with who I am generally. I think that definitely is a thing that comes with age. I think as you grow older, you just gain more self-confidence, you gain more of a sense of there's more to you than just your outward appearance. So I think that helps with you just accepting you as the way that you are. Now that I am older and I do have that perspective of I am who I am, it's much easier for me to ignore the beauty standard than when I first came to Korea. Don't get me wrong, I still have days where I don't feel great about the way that I look. That is just natural. I think everybody on earth feels that way. Everybody on earth to a certain extent is not entirely happy with how they look. As I mentioned before, I think as you grow older you just realise there is more to life than your outward appearance, and the more that you kind of feel comfortable with that, the easier it is to live in Korea, I've found. So yeah, although the pressure of being beautiful outwardly is still definitely there for me on some days, for the most part I feel confident enough in who I am that I don't feel that pressure and that urge to fit the beauty standard as much as I did when I first came here. The fourth way that Korea has changed me is that I walk a lot more in Korea than I ever walked living in the UK. I am not brave enough to drive in Korea. I do have a driving license, a UK driving license. I woke up in a new Bugatti. But I am not brave enough to drive in Korea, so I walk pretty much everywhere. Because of that, I hit my 10,000 step goal pretty much every day in Korea without even trying, honestly, which is really, really nice. Before, when I lived in the UK, I used to have to force myself to go on walks, and even then I would kind of get bored halfway through and be like, I just want to go home. But in Korea, I find that walking is just natural to me. It's just how I get to places, therefore hitting that 10k step goal, I don't even really have to think about it. So that's really nice. I've noticed that my health has improved as a result of that. I'm pretty sure I can thank the insanely big hills in Korea for the improvement in my cardio health. I actually have a smartwatch I want some ice on my wrist that measures my heart rate. And I've noticed since living in Korea that it takes a lot less physical activity. Less? That's not the right term. It takes much more physical activity to raise my heart rate now than it did previously when I was living in the UK, and barely moving day to day. When I did move, I got out of breath very quickly, especially if I was going up flights of stairs and things like that. I could maybe climb maximum 2 flights of stairs before I was like out of breath, sweaty in the face. Leading on from this is spending more time outside of the house. Because of cafe culture in Korea, as well as my apartment in Korea being very small, it makes me want to get out of the house more and explore outside more. When I lived in the UK, a big reason why my cardio health was as bad as it was is because I spent most of my time in the house playing video games. I've always been a huge gamer. There's nothing wrong with sitting and playing video games occasionally here and there. However, to the extent that I was doing it, it was very unhealthy. I had pretty much begun to morph into one being with my gaming chair. There are also just a lot of interesting places to visit in Korea, which again helps you want to get out of the house more. There's just so many nice places to visit. There's the Han River, there's palaces, there's museums, there's so many things. There's just so many interesting places to visit in Korea that you just want to go and explore, which again, it's useful for getting movement in, but it was also really useful in the fact that it made me find enjoyment in things that weren't just gaming or watching TV at home. It made me find enjoyment in things that were healthier for me and helped improve me overall. You know, instead of sitting home and playing video games for hours and hours on end, I could get out of the house, go to a cafe and study Korean for hours instead. Just those kinds of things that I noticed helped improve me and helped me spend more time on things that developed me as a person. Which leads me nicely on to my 5th point, which is that living in Korea has helped me become more extroverted, at least slightly. I'm still very much an introvert. However, traveling in general just helps you to come out of your shell a lot more. Obviously, living in Korea, I have to speak Korean on a daily basis. And when I first moved here, I was not comfortable with speaking Korean in the slightest. So I was being forced into uncomfortable situations on a daily basis, as I had to, you know, go outside and communicate in a language that I wasn't comfortable in. So I was frequently being put into these uncomfortable situations that helped me grow as a person. Having to speak in a language that you are not comfortable in for multiple times a day to multiple different people really helps you in building your self-confidence and obviously in your ability to speak to people. It really put it into perspective for me, because back when I lived in the UK, I used to really panic just speaking to people in restaurants, at the supermarket. Just speaking to the cashier would freak me out. And living in Korea really put that into perspective, because why am I afraid to speak in my native language to people when this is what I can do in Korea? So this perspective really helped to improve my self-confidence. Now when I go back to the UK, I have no problem because I'm like, this is my native language, this is comfortable for me, this is fine, this is nothing compared to what I've had to do living in Korea. So now I'm much more comfortable with speaking to people without worrying that I'm coming across as weird or socially awkward. Don't get me wrong, I am very much both of those things, but I'm just better at hiding it now, I think. But also with the being more extroverted, Korea makes you want to go out and see your friends more. It makes you want to go out and socialize more. Again, I've already mentioned this, but there's just so many activities to do, especially in Seoul, that it makes you more extroverted without you even realizing it, honestly. And for me, I think that's actually been the biggest shock and the biggest change, even more than eating raw squid. The biggest shock for me has definitely been becoming more of an extrovert, especially considering how much of an introvert I have always been. Let me know in the comments down below if you're an introvert or an extrovert, and if there's anything that has actually made you sway towards one side or the other more in recent years, because I'm genuinely curious to know. And that's pretty much all the yapping that I want to do today. As always, thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed this video or found it interesting or helpful at all, then please make sure to like, comment and subscribe, as it helps me out a lot. Hopefully I will see you again in my next video. Bye guys!